The first time I heard about what happened in that town I did not believe any of it because Halloween stories in America are everywhere and most of them are exaggerated by people who want attention, but this one was different because every person I spoke to told the same details without changing anything, and all of it was connected to one Halloween night in a small town in the Midwest, a town that most people drive through without stopping, a town surrounded by forests, cornfields and long empty roads where phone signals disappear after sunset. The town looked normal during the day: white houses, wooden porches, flags hanging quietly and children riding bicycles, but when October came something shifted in the air. People locked their doors earlier, shop owners closed before dark, and no one decorated their houses anymore. Even though years ago the town was famous for its Halloween celebrations, people from nearby counties used to visit for haunted trails and costume parades until the year everything went wrong. On Halloween night the temperature dropped faster than usual and a thick fog rolled in just after sunset, covering the streets like a blanket, the kind of fog that absorbs sound and makes every streetlight look like a dim ghost floating above the road. Parents rushed their children inside and only a few teenagers remained outside laughing, trying to prove they were not afraid. There was a house at the edge of town near the forest that everyone avoided. It had belonged to a family who disappeared decades earlier. No bodies were ever found, just their car abandoned on a highway miles away. People said the house was empty, but neighbors often reported lights turning on by themselves and shadows moving behind the curtains. That Halloween a group of 6 teenagers decided to go there. They wanted to film a scare video to post online and show everyone they were brave. They parked their car near the trees and walked toward the house, their footsteps sounding wrong in the fog, like someone else was walking with them. When they reached the front door, it was already open, slowly swaying back and forth. Even though there was no wind inside, the air smelled old, like wet wood and something metallic. Their phone lights flickered, but they laughed and stepped inside, calling each other names, trying to hide their fear. The house was colder than outside and the walls were covered in old stains that looked like handprints, some going up the walls toward the ceiling as if someone had tried to climb away from the floor. They heard a sound upstairs, slow footsteps dragging across the floor. One of the girls whispered that someone was there, but the others told her it was probably an animal, raccoon or something living in the attic. As they climbed the stairs, the steps creaked loudly and each sound echoed too long. The hallway upstairs seemed longer than it should have been, stretching into darkness. Doors lined both sides, some open, some closed. One boy pushed open the first door and found a bedroom untouched by time, a bed still made, toys on the floor and drawings taped to the wall showing stick figures with red lines covering their faces. He joked that it was creepy and stepped inside. That was when the door slammed shut behind him so hard the walls shook. The others screamed and tried to open it, but it would not move. They could hear him pounding from the inside, screaming for help, begging them to let him out. Then suddenly everything went quiet, too quiet. When the door finally opened, he was gone. The room was empty, no window open, no hiding place, nothing, just silence. Panic spread and they ran down the hallway toward the stairs, but the stairs were no longer there. The hallway ended in a solid wall where the staircase should have been, and behind them they heard breathing, slow, heavy breathing coming closer. One by one their phone lights went out, leaving them in darkness except for a faint glow at the end of the hall where a tall figure stood motionless, watching them, its shape wrong, too thin, arms too long, head tilted at an angle no human could hold. The figure began to move, dragging its feet across the floor, and wherever it stepped the wood turned black like it was rotting. Instantly one girl tried to run and fell, and when the others turned to help her she was being pulled backward by invisible hands, her nails scraping the floor, leaving deep marks as she screamed until her voice broke. By morning the police found the house empty again, no signs of struggle, no blood, no bodies, just 6 cars parked near the forest and phone cameras scattered on the porch, all recordings corrupted except for one clip showing fog thick as smoke and a voice whispering "Happy Halloween" over and over. 5 teenagers were never seen again. One survived. He was found walking down the highway barefoot hours away from town, his clothes torn, his eyes wide and unfocused. He could not speak for days, and when he finally did, he said the house was not haunted by ghosts but by something that wears people like costumes on Halloween night. Since that year the town cancelled Halloween completely. No decorations, no trick-or-treating, no festivals, and anyone who stays out after dark on October 31st reports hearing footsteps behind them and a voice calling their name from the fog. This is only the beginning. After the survivor was taken to the hospital, doctors said his body showed signs of extreme dehydration and hypothermia, but what disturbed them most were the bruises, fingerprints all over his arms, legs and neck, overlapping in places where no human hand could fit. He kept waking up screaming, clawing at the air, saying it was standing in the corner watching him, waiting for night to fall. The police tried to investigate the house, but every time they went there something went wrong. Radios failed, engines died, cameras shut off without explanation. One officer claimed he heard children laughing from inside the walls. Another quit the force entirely after finding his own name carved into the wooden floor of the upstairs hallway, exactly where the stairs should have been. The survivor eventually told his full story, but only at night, only when the lights were off. He said the house was not empty but trapped between moments, that on Halloween night something opens inside. It's something older than the town, older than the land itself. He said the thing feeds on fear and memory, and once it touches you it learns your face, your voice, your life. He described how time stopped inside the house, how minutes stretched into hours, and how the walls breathed slowly like a living thing. After the first boy disappeared, the rest of them were hunted, not chased but stalked, separated by doors that led to rooms that did not exist, repeating hallways, stairs that twisted into ceilings, and windows that showed places far away, cornfields, highways, childhood homes. One girl saw her dead grandmother standing in a kitchen calling her name, smiling softly when she stepped forward. The face peeled away, revealing darkness underneath, and long fingers wrapped around her, pulling her into the floor like water swallowing a stone. Another boy hid in a closet holding his breath while something stood outside whispering his secrets, things he had never told anyone, sins, regrets, moments he thought no one saw. The voice sounded exactly like his own, and when he finally covered his ears the whispering came from inside his head. The survivor said the thing never rushed, it enjoyed the waiting, enjoyed watching them break one by one. It made them relive their worst memories, twisted and endless, until they begged for it to stop, and that was when it took them. After the incident, people began reporting strange things every Halloween, not just in that town but in nearby areas as well. Drivers on rural roads saw figures standing in the fog waving for help, only to vanish when approached. Houses with lights on that disappeared the next morning. Children knocking on doors wearing costumes that looked too real, wounds stitched, skin pale, eyes asking for candy and smiling too wide. There were reports of people finding old photographs in their homes, pictures of themselves standing in places they had never been, taken on Halloween night with the same tall shadow visible behind them no matter the location. The survivor eventually disappeared as well. 1 year after the incident, on October 31, his hospital room was found empty, bed sheets twisted, footprints leading to the window which was sealed shut. On the wall, written in something dark, were the words, "It is my turn to wear the mask." After that, authorities quietly sealed the house, boarded it up, fenced it off, but the fence was cut every year no matter how many times it was repaired, and each Halloween morning fresh footprints were found leading away from the house toward town. Residents who moved away said the nightmares followed them. They dreamed of fog creeping under doors, of footsteps in empty hallways, of a voice whispering "Happy Halloween" in their own tone. In one case, a family moved all the way to another state believing they were safe. On Halloween night, their new home lights flickered and their front door slowly opened even though it was locked, and standing on the porch was a man wearing the father's face, smiling, asking to be let inside. The town itself began to fade, businesses closed, houses were abandoned, and eventually the town no longer appeared on some maps, like it was being erased. People who tried to visit often got lost, roads looping back on themselves, GPS rerouting endlessly. Those who somehow found the place reported hearing movement inside the boarded house, breathing, scratching, dragging footsteps, and sometimes laughter, children laughing softly echoing through empty streets. Every Halloween the fog still comes thick and heavy, and people swear they see figures walking through it heading toward the house, faces, familiar voices calling, inviting them home. By the third year, people across the country were experiencing things that could not be explained, and none of it made the news because every report sounded insane and disconnected, yet the details always matched: fog after sunset, lights failing, doors opening by themselves, and a presence that never showed its true face unless it wanted to. In a small neighborhood outside Salem, a family prepared for Halloween. The parents, skeptical of stories, locking doors, keeping lights on, their children excited, putting on costumes just before dark. When the fog rolled in thicker than weather reports predicted, neighbors vanished from their porches, candy bowls left untouched, and silence spread street by street. The father stepped outside to check the power box and heard footsteps behind him, matching his pace. When he turned, he saw himself standing a few feet away, wearing his jacket, smiling gently, asking why he looked so afraid. He ran back inside, locking the door, but when he looked through the window, the thing was already in the living room, standing behind his children. In Ohio, a group of college students hosted a Halloween party, music loud, alcohol flowing, until one of them noticed the back hallway had grown longer, stretching deeper into shadow. They laughed until someone walked down it and never returned, the hallway shrinking back to normal minutes later as if it had never changed. Security footage later showed a tall figure bending unnaturally, walking beside the missing student, placing a hand on his shoulder and guiding him into darkness. In Texas, a police officer responding to a noise complaint on Halloween night entered a house that did not exist on any property record. Inside, he found rooms filled with masks hanging from hooks, thousands of them, each face different, some crying, some smiling, some frozen in terror. One mask looked exactly like him. He ran outside and the house was gone, leaving only bare land and his radio repeating "Happy Halloween" in his own voice. People began to understand too late that the thing was spreading, not traveling but copying itself like a reflection, jumping from fear to fear, from person to person. Halloween was not the cause but the door, the one night when pretending becomes belief, when masks replace faces and fear is welcomed. The truth came from a journal found years later in a library basement in a different state, written by a man who had vanished in the original town decades before he wrote about something awakened by ritual, not magic but tradition, generations feeding it with attention, fear, stories, disguises, and permission to knock. He said the thing could not enter unless invited, and Halloween was the only night people invited strangers without question, opening doors, smiling at unknown faces, saying "come in" without thinking. He described how the thing learned humanity slowly, first mimicking voices, then appearances, then memories, until it could walk among people unnoticed except for the eyes, always wrong, always empty. The journal ended with a warning written shakily, saying that once the thing learns you fully, it does not kill you, it replaces you and wears your life while you remain trapped inside, watching, unable to scream. In recent years, reports increased of people returning home after Halloween and feeling something off, family members acting slightly different, habits changed, laughter delayed, reflections not matching movements perfectly. Hospitals documented cases of patients insisting they were not who everyone thought they were, begging doctors to check mirrors, refusing to look at their own faces, screaming when masks were mentioned. Then last year something happened that terrified those who knew the old stories. There was no fog. Halloween night passed clear and quiet, decorations stayed up, children went door to door, nothing strange reported. Relief spread until the next morning when thousands of people across the country woke to find their front doors open and muddy footprints leading inside but none leading out. Phones across multiple states recorded the same message sent at exactly midnight, a simple video of a smiling face constantly changing, familiar yet unknown, whispering one sentence: "Halloween is over, I do not need the mask anymore." Since then, disappearances have no longer been limited to one night. People vanish during ordinary days, reflections blink independently, voices echo from empty rooms, and sometimes when you answer a knock you see someone you love standing there smiling, just a little too still. If you are reading this and something feels wrong, if Halloween memories feel too real, if you hear your name called when no one is home, do not answer, do not open the door, and never invite anything inside.